This is a little bit of water that in a feeder that I use for just cleaning my hands because they get a little bit sticky. Here's the honey in the extractor. So you turn this on, and I'll just take a quick peek so you can see in there. The honey is spinning. The honey is going to come down here and pour into this bucket. I'm not using a filter because I got a magic process that I use for filtering the honey without a filter, which I will show at a later date. Here's the decapping knife. And I just get it in there. Try not to trim the actual wood on the side of the frames, which I am a little bit. You know, I think a good decapping knife would be a little bit flexible, so it bends inwards when you're decapping the honey. All that stuff just got decapped. I'm just sort of removing it with this, I think it's called the decapping fork. And again, some people, when they decap their honey using a fork like this, they do this. They go click, click, click like that. I just don't see the point of that. I just scrape it. Just scrape open the bits. I suppose you get more, more waxy bits in the honey when you do it like I do. Like if I could scrape this whole thing like this and not even use the decapping knife, and which is fine. And actually I'm pretty tempted to do that now that I think about it, because the way I filter my honey these days, I don't filter it. Yeah, look, this as it happens, I'll have to do, this one's too thin, so I'll just scrape it all open with my decapping knife, or my decapping fork. Have I been saying knife? Anyway. So that's all. You know, it's decapped and all the cappings are mushed up on the sides of the frame, and all that will go through the extractor and come at the bottom of the extractor, whereas this side won't have as much debris, wax debris. But I'm not sure it matters, because if you're, this is a frame that's been extracted, it's completely empty. Because if you pour all the honey into a bucket with all that extra wax, all that wax, just give it a day or maybe two, and all that wax just floats to the surface, and then you just skim off all the wax and everything else that's just floating to the top, and you've got clean honey, and you didn't have to bother filtering it. And when you filter it, and you're pouring it out of the extractor, sometimes you have to slow it down because the filter slows down the flow of the honey. But if you just stuck it in the bucket and just scrape the gunk off a day or two later, you don't have it slowing you down. You can just pour freely and off you go. All right, so here's some of my extracted honey. So the frame is just totally clean. Looking good. All right, here we go again. Let's see if this one will shave off most of the comb. Oh yeah, look. So this frame too, it's not an older frame. The comb is probably drawn out this year, so it's lighter. It looks lighter. Some people say that honey that's stored in dark comb will be dark. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's accurate at all. If you looked at the video I shot yesterday, there's quite a bit of nice light honey coming out of those very dark combs. Like those combs are practically black, and the honey looks fine. Looks nice and light. There we go. This is a lot nicer than I have the heated decapping knife too. Let's see, that's not as thick. But I definitely prefer the regular knife over the hot decapping knife. Some people think that the hot decapping knife burns the honey. I don't think it does. It touches the honey for just a split second. The other thing I do is, honestly, I just completely forgot about this, is I use a heating gun to melt the cappings. The benefit of the heating gun is it doesn't produce this mess. You get a little bit of extra comb in the honey that you have to filter out or just, get rid of afterwards. But you don't get this mess of cappings. But some people like those cappings because they get to melt them down and make wax and stuff like that out of them, or wax candles. Now this is a frame. This is a foundationless frame, and you can see I had to scrape it with the fork like this, but it all worked. It all came out. This side was fine, but this side was a bit messy. Now I can put that back in the hive, and the bees will sort that all out. And now it's raining. But anyway, yeah, this is a black frame, but the honey was still nice, and it wasn't black. This belief that dark comb creates dark honey isn't really true. So yesterday I extracted 6 medium frames, and I got a little over 5 liters of honey. Had I spread those frames out more, I probably would have got another liter or so. When you put, say 9 frames, or even 8 frames in a 10 frame box and spread them out, the bees make thicker comb, and you get more honey out of less frames. It's amazing. I've had frames that had as much as 6 pounds of honey per frame by spreading them out, by putting 8 frames inside a 10 frame super. So anyway, today I'm going to extract another 6 frames. So that'll give me probably, out of 12 frames, I'll probably get a little over, I'll get almost a liter per frame, which is pretty good. For a 10 frame box, that's pretty good, because these frames aren't thick. Again, if you get thicker frames, you get more honey per frame, and a lot more honey per frame. I don't know what 6 pounds of honey comes to in liquid form. I could figure it out and put it on the screen. Now see, this is another reason why I think it's great to, I just didn't have time to do it this year, but in my honey supers to put 9 frames or even 8 frames in a 10 frame box, because they build thicker comb and it's easier, and the thicker comb spreads out past the sides of the frame, and it's a lot easier to cut it off with the knife, because this one is thin. It's still got honey in it, it's still fine, but the knife won't go through, won't reach the cappings, because the cappings need to bulge out a bit, or the honey needs to bulge out a bit. So I'm just doing this. This will still work. It's funny too, this honey, I can tell it isn't as, what's the word for liquidy? It's viscous. It's thicker because it got a little bit cold last night, not very cold, but a bit cold, colder than it was yesterday. And the honey isn't as runny. I can tell it's thicker. And so thicker honey tends to, it's harder to whip it out of the extractor. So this is why people in their honey houses, they actually turn the heat up, or they have honey houses made out of glass so that they heat up quickly in the sun. And you're just sweating the whole time. It's just like I'm sweating right now. It's not even hot. All right, this is a foundationless frame, and it's not thick. I regret, I just didn't have time. This honey was taken from a hive that I have in another location. I just don't have time to give them the attention that I would to my hives. Look at this though, to my hives next to my house. So I just have to do a lot of set it and forget it, and hope. And I rely a lot on my past experience and my knowledge to just take a good guess at what the bees are going to do and what they need. And most of the time I'm right. Look how light that honey is. Let's taste it. Whoop. Oh man. So here you can see this is a black starter strip. This may be the exact frame that I had in the previous video a little while ago. And the starter strip is glued underneath that bottom bar, and the bees hang off it and then they build natural comb. I think this might be the exact frame. You don't always need a starter strip. I have a frame that I looked at yesterday that I forgot to put, actually what happened is I put the starter strip on the bottom. I didn't put it up on the top, so the starter strip on the bottom does nothing. And they still made it perfectly. They still just found the center of the top bar and built perfectly centered comb. Okay, now we're down to the final frame. I can tell this is a thin frame. I don't know if the knife is going to make it. Oh yeah, kind of. Let's just scrape it with the knife, or with the fork. Yeah, I can tell this honey is thickened up a bit overnight, because it's just, like yesterday when I was doing this, it was so warm, as soon as I broke the cells, the honey just poured out of the cells. Which means it'll take a little bit longer to extract. And when I extract my honey, it's gone from the frames within 2 or 3 minutes. It just goes really fast. But I just turn it on and I leave, and I come back like 10 or 15 minutes later just to make sure it's all completely gone. And again, it looks messy, but it'll work. The extractor will flick all that honey out. It's funny too, I don't know if you can see it in this shot, but right here it's thin, or it's lighter, and over here it's darker. And I think this is, I don't know what that is. I think it's just darker comb, not darker honey. I get my bees to build as much foundationless comb as I can. Which is, sometimes it's tricky. I use foundationless comb because, yeah, while I'm talking you can look at all that mess. I put in as much foundationless comb as I can because I initially started doing it because if you give the bees foundationless comb, they'll draw out mostly drone comb, and they won't put the drones in between the boxes of the supers in the spring, which is a big mess. So that definitely helps with that. So I'm always trying to just add at least 2 frames of foundationless comb per box, especially during the spring, and it really makes a difference. But I also just put it in anyway because I'm just sick of working with plastic foundation, because these days plastic foundation doesn't come with good waxing like it used to, and you got to wax it now. That's another chore you got to do. You got to wax the plastic foundation, and it's just like, give me a break. So I'm getting tired of all the extra chores that are involved with beekeeping. So I'm just not using foundation anymore. I put in as much foundationless frame, completely foundationless frames as I can, and I let the bees build it out. They don't always build it out. You have to be very careful with it. I'll just give you a demo. Like these 2 frames this is drawn comb, and they're both perfectly drawn comb. If I put a foundationless frame between these 2 and smack them together to maintain bee space, that foundationless frame would get built out properly. But if one of these frames wasn't perfectly drawn out all the way, and it was just partially drawn, or there was space underneath this top bar for some reason, then the foundationless comb would probably get drawn outwards past into this frame, and it would be a big mess. So it's the same principle that applies when you're making thick honey in your honey supers. If you spread out the frames and give the bees more space, they make thicker comb. And it's the same thing when you're making foundationless comb. If you give them the space, they'll make thicker comb, but that thicker comb will be a pain to use because it'll be too thick to put inside your brood nest. So you have to be very careful that they're between 2 perfectly drawn out frames of comb. If they're not, you're gonna get a mess. I have way more drawn comb than I need most of the time, and most of it's plastic, and some of it's like over 10 years old. So I'm just slowly cycling it out and replacing it with foundationless comb. I'm not buying foundation anymore. I'm not snapping foundation into my frames anymore. I'm not going to be waxing foundation anymore. I'm done. This is probably what I should do every time. Now you can get a decapping tray or container so that all the cappings fall into a nice filtered tray, and then all the honey gets filtered and all that stuff in there. And the price for that is ridiculous. Like everything else in beekeeping, it's just too expensive. Like unless you got money to burn or you got, you know, funding from the government, you're not going to spend money on that. At least I'm not. So I just put it in a bucket, and honestly I don't really care about the honey, the little bit of honey that's in those wax cappings. So I just leave it outdoors, away from the bees where it won't trigger robbing. And they clean it up, and the honey is dry and flaky and perfect, or the comb is dry, flaky and perfect. So I got a little over 5 liters from my hive from 6 frames yesterday, so I'll probably get a little over that today. So we'll turn it on like this, just a little bit, and we'll gradually turn it up. Now most of the honey has already been extracted, but it's still pouring out the sides. I'm going to put the top on because this is dangerous. Do not try this at home. Put the top off, and now I'm going to turn it back up. Alright, so I've got my bucket of honey in my living room because the lighting in my garage and the lighting in my kitchen sucks. So this is what you got. So it's a food grade plastic bucket, yada yada yada, everything's great, everything's sanitized and clean. Okay, so this is the honey, and this is all the wax cappings that normally are filtered through a filter, but the filter slows down the process of extracting the honey because the filter, all this stuff gunks up inside the filter and it slows it down, and you got to clean the filter and all this other stuff. So what I do, and what I've started doing last year, and it works perfectly, is I just dump it all into the bucket. See that? That's clean honey underneath all this. So all that wax just rises to the top, and it's filtered. There's no need to filter it. Just don't take that stuff. Then you come over here and you pour your honey out of that gate, and all that gunk is up here, and then let it get down to here, and then as long as you don't actually suck up that gunk, you're good. And if you want to, you can just scrape all this gunk off, put it in a bucket, and let the bees clean it up or strain it or whatever. So you have less of that gunk floating on the surface. See that? Less of that wax floating on the surface when you get down to the bottom, down here. And that's how I filter my honey. If I had to, like someone was looking for ultra filtered honey, I would still do this, and then I just filter this stuff without all the gunk through a filter, and it would just go through the filter in like 2 seconds because it's got all this gunk. Most of the gunk's already gone. And that's my magic method for harvesting honey and not having to filter it. It works really well. It looks like I got a little over 11 liters of honey. So that's almost 1 liter per frame, per medium frame. That's pretty good. Alright, so now I'm back in my kitchen where the lighting isn't the greatest, but this is all I can do. I've got my big bucket right here. So these jars can hold about 5 liters of honey. Let's get going. Here we go. And all the gunk should be at the top of the honey. So there shouldn't be... Here we go. Just let it go. There it is. Let's get a better shot. I'll try to get a better shot of that, but there it is, filling up. Now, I can see there's actually some gunk coming into this honey. So, I haven't left it long enough. I need to leave this bucket for another day or two because some of these floaty, waxy cappings are still floating in the honey, and I don't want that. So I'm going to wait a couple days, and in a couple days most of it will have risen to the top, and it'll be clear honey that I can bottle like I was just about to do, but I can't do now. But basically, there you go, you get the picture. And that's basically, oh yeah, and it tastes great. See, I don't really mind that. That's the other thing too. Like there's all these little bits of cappings and propolis and other things floating in there, pollen. That doesn't really bother me, but I know it bothers most people. So I'm just going to wait for this to completely clear in a couple days, and then I'll bottle it. Some people would look at all this messy, gooey, sticky wax floating on top of the honey as being kind of gross. But by allowing it to just sit here for a couple of days as the honey beneath it just clears and all that extra floaty bits of wax float to the top, and the honey naturally clears, all that time this wax will be imparting its flavor into the honey. It imparts a unique and sort of silky texture and flavor to the honey. That wax is flavor country. It's great. So it looks kind of gross, but just to leave it alone for a few days doesn't hurt the honey, and it really, I think, improves the subtle texture and flavors that you'll find in raw honey.